Today, let's walk together through a kitchen journey. I'm going to show you 3 everyday foods you should reheat, foods that heal, support, and uplift your body, and 6 you should absolutely avoid putting back in the microwave or pan. And trust me, by the end, you might never look at your leftovers the same way again. Let's begin with the good news. Foods you can and should reheat for better health. 1. Oatmeal, a warm embrace for the mind and gut. There's something sacred about mornings in our later years. The quiet, the light, the sense that each new day is a chance to choose better. And for me, nothing fits that moment more perfectly than oatmeal. I used to make it fresh each time, but then I discovered something incredible. When you cook oatmeal, cool it, and reheat it later, it actually becomes more powerful for your health. That seemed strange at first. I mean, how can warming something up again increase its value? But the science checks out. When oatmeal cools, the starch inside changes form, becoming what's called a resistant starch. This type of starch doesn't get digested in your small intestine. Instead, it travels further down to feed the good bacteria in your gut. And that's a big deal, because as we age, digestion slows down and our blood sugar becomes more erratic. Reheated oatmeal can help stabilize both. I've noticed that on days I have warm leftover oatmeal for breakfast, I feel more grounded. My mood is steady. I stay full longer. And my blood sugar, it doesn't spike like it does with toast or boxed cereals. Plus, oats are loaded with beta-glucan, a type of fiber that's been proven to lower bad cholesterol. That's a quiet shield for your heart, 1 spoonful at a time. And here's the best part. Oatmeal isn't just functional. It's delicious, flexible, and easy on a senior stomach. Add some cinnamon, chopped walnuts, or blueberries, and you've got a bowl that's not just food, it's healing, emotionally too. On cold mornings or hard mornings, it feels like care in edible form. Sometimes I prepare it at night, just knowing tomorrow will feel better if breakfast is already taken care of. There's a kind of peace in opening the fridge and seeing that bowl waiting, a small promise I made to myself the night before. When I warm it up, I don't rush. I add a splash of almond milk or water, stir gently, and let the aroma bloom slowly into the room. It feels like a morning ritual, not just a meal. What surprised me most was how differently my body reacted compared to when I ate a fresh bowl. Reheated oatmeal feels gentler somehow, more nourishing, more forgiving. My stomach doesn't gurgle or complain the way it does with other breakfasts. And my energy lasts through mid-morning, without that crash that sends you searching for snacks or caffeine. I've even noticed my joints don't ache quite as much on those days. Could be coincidence, but the anti-inflammatory effect is backed by science. So I trust that my bowl is working for me, even in quiet ways I can't always feel. When I skip it, I notice the difference. Less focus, more hunger, more emotional wobble. One time I added flax seeds and a touch of maple syrup, and it felt like dessert. Only I knew it was a dessert my heart and gut would thank me for. The warmth of the bowl in my hands reminds me to slow down, to breathe, to begin my day without rushing. Oatmeal does that. It slows the world down just enough to catch up with myself. I sometimes think of it as breakfast with memory, because oatmeal takes me back to my grandmother's kitchen, to foggy mornings at the cabin, to a time when life was simpler and meals had meaning. Maybe that's why it's more than food now. It's an anchor, a return to myself. And from a practical point of view, it's budget friendly. It's easy to prep in batches. It lasts well in the fridge. For seniors trying to simplify without sacrificing nutrition, that matters more than we realize. It's one of the few foods that feels both old-fashioned and perfectly modern. 2. Vegetable soup, gentle medicine for joints, immunity, and the soul. I remember one chilly afternoon sitting by the window, my knees aching a little more than usual, the sky dim, and my energy fading. I wasn't hungry, not really, but I craved warmth. That's when I ladled out some leftover vegetable soup I'd made the day before. As it warmed, the smell filled the kitchen. And when I took that first spoonful, something shifted, not just physically, but emotionally, too. Vegetable soup isn't just comfort food for seniors. It's a kind of edible medicine, especially when reheated. Why? Because time deepens its healing power. When you cook vegetables like carrots, onions, celery, spinach, or sweet potatoes, and let them rest overnight, their cell walls begin to break down. Upon reheating, more nutrients are released into the broth. Phytonutrients, minerals, antioxidants. All of it becomes more accessible to your body. That's crucial when your immune system isn't what it used to be. For seniors fighting off inflammation, dealing with arthritis, or trying to avoid respiratory infections, that warm bowl can be a powerful ally. Reheated soup stimulates circulation, calms inflammation, and delivers hydration in one gentle form. There were days when eating solid meals felt like too much effort. On those days, soup became my savior, easy to chew, easy to digest, and full of life-giving nutrition. Add some turmeric, garlic, or parsley when you reheat it, and you boost its power even more. It's not just about nutrition, it's about how food makes you feel safe, nurtured, cared for. It's funny how a bowl of soup can do what no pill or stretching routine ever could. That day, sitting quietly at the table, every spoonful felt like it was easing something invisible inside me. My hands, usually stiff in the morning, unclenched just a little. My breathing slowed. The ache in my lower back didn't vanish, but it softened, like the soup was doing something under the surface that I couldn't quite name. And the flavor? Somehow better than the day before. The carrots had sweetened, the onions had mellowed, even the broth had thickened into something more soulful. It didn't just taste like vegetables, it tasted like restoration. What I didn't expect was how long that feeling would last. For hours afterward, I felt steady, nourished. My stomach wasn't bloated. My joints weren't barking. Even my mood had shifted, less anxious, more present. That's not just food, that's healing. Sometimes I make a big pot and portion it into jars, lining them up like little health potions in the fridge. Knowing they're there, ready to reheat when I need them, gives me a kind of peace that's hard to explain. It's self-care in advance. A small act of kindness to my future self. And you know what? It doesn't take much. A handful of fresh herbs, a squeeze of lemon at the end, a pinch of sea salt, or a swirl of olive oil. With each reheating, the soup doesn't weaken. It gets deeper, stronger, more complex, just like us. I've read that soups like this help maintain hydration in seniors, especially those of us who don't drink as much water as we should. That matters more than most people think. Dehydration doesn't always show up as thirst. It shows up as fatigue, foggy thinking, poor circulation. This soup answers all of that. There's something ancient about it too. Soup has been around for centuries. Every culture has their version. It connects us to something older, wiser, slower. And when I reheat that pot on a quiet afternoon, I feel part of that long line of people who've used food not just to survive, but to soothe, to heal, to hope. I've learned that meals don't have to be complicated to be powerful. This one is as simple as it gets. Water, vegetables, patience. And yet it feels like the most complete thing I can offer my body. Every bite says, "I've got you." Even on days when my appetite is low or chewing feels like a chore, soup never lets me down. It slips in quietly, warms from the inside, and leaves me better than it found me. And maybe that's the truest thing I can say about it. It doesn't just fill a belly, it fills a gap between fatigue and vitality, between isolation and connection, between the body you have and the strength you still remember. 3. Brown rice, a quiet foundation for strength and longevity. Now here's something I didn't expect to say. Brown rice might be the most underestimated food in a senior's kitchen. I used to see it as just filler, a bland side dish. But once I learned about what happens when brown rice is cooled and reheated properly, my whole perspective changed. Much like oatmeal, brown rice develops resistant starches after it cools. Starches that support your gut, balance your blood sugar, and deliver slow, steady energy. But brown rice goes even further. It's packed with magnesium, selenium, and B vitamins, nutrients that many of us don't get enough of as we age. And they matter. Magnesium helps with muscle cramps and nerve function. B vitamins protect our brain. Selenium supports the immune system. I began warming my brown rice with just a bit of water, gently steaming it until soft again. I added it to soups, paired it with lentils, or drizzled it with olive oil and herbs. Suddenly, this humble grain became a staple, a symbol of grounded, sustainable strength. And let's not forget the emotional comfort. Rice has this uncanny ability to feel familiar, like a memory on a plate. It doesn't just fill the belly, it steadies the spirit, especially on days when life feels wobbly. What really surprised me was how it felt in my body after eating it reheated. Not heavy, not bloated, just calm, steady. Like my digestion was humming along without resistance. That's a gift you don't take for granted when you're older, and every meal can feel like a gamble between comfort and discomfort. And the energy, it wasn't flashy, it didn't spike or drop. It just stayed with me, quietly, like a reliable friend walking beside me through the day. I didn't need that mid-morning snack. I didn't feel jittery or sleepy, just balanced. That's the kind of fuel I've learned to cherish. Even better, my blood pressure readings started creeping back into a healthier range. I hadn't changed much else, just swapped out white rice for brown, made it in batches, and warmed it gently when needed. It was like giving my heart a break, one warm grain at a time. And don't let its plain appearance fool you. Brown rice carries ancient power. Civilizations were built on grains like this. It's been a survival food, a ceremonial offering, a symbol of nourishment across the world. There's something grounding about putting that kind of history on your plate. I started experimenting, mixing in soft-cooked beans or gently sautéed spinach. Sometimes I'd crack an egg over it while warming, let it steam and soak in. Other times, just a pinch of sea salt and a drizzle of sesame oil. It always worked, always felt nourishing. Even the act of reheating it became its own rhythm. A little water in the pan, a lid, 5 minutes of patience. No microwave explosions, no dried out edges, just warmth returning quietly. And I'll admit, brown rice gave me back a little kitchen confidence. On days when cooking felt like too much, knowing I had something so versatile and so healing already prepped made all the difference. It wasn't takeout, it wasn't processed, it was mine. Made with intention, stored with care, revived with purpose. There's something special about a food that holds space for you. That doesn't overwhelm or underwhelm. That just shows up, nourishing without demanding anything in return. Brown rice does that. It supports, steadies, and sustains. I've read that brown rice is particularly good for maintaining muscle function in seniors, thanks to the magnesium and B vitamins. That's critical when every step, every grip, every movement starts to mean more. It's not about bodybuilding, it's about keeping going comfortably. Some evenings, I'll scoop out a warm bowl and sit in silence with it. No distractions, just me and the grain. And I swear, in those moments, I can feel it working. Not just feeding my body, but reminding me that small, simple things still hold the power to make life better. Now let's pivot. Not all reheated meals give back. Some quietly take away. 1. Cooked mushrooms. The hidden danger beneath the surface. I'll confess, I love mushrooms. There's something earthy and grounding about them. For years, I'd toss the extras into the fridge and reheat them the next day. But once I learned what really happens inside that squishy texture after reheating, I stopped. See, mushrooms are delicate. They're full of complex proteins and amino acids that start to break down during cooking. The first time, that's okay, but reheat them, especially after they've cooled, and those proteins change again. This second transformation can make them harder to digest, something our aging systems don't handle so well. Worse, mushrooms stored improperly or left out too long can harbor bacteria like Listeria or Clostridium botulinum. And reheating them at low temps doesn't always kill those off. For someone younger, that might not be a big deal. But for us, with weaker digestion and slower immunity, it's a real risk. What's sneaky is that symptoms don't always show up right away. Sometimes it's just subtle bloating, fatigue, or a sense of being off. But it accumulates. Every time I reheated mushrooms, I was unknowingly taxing my body. Now I enjoy them fresh, sautéed gently and savored fully, once. I didn't always think of mushrooms as fragile. They seemed hearty, dense, flavorful, satisfying. But the truth is, they're one of the most delicate ingredients in the fridge once cooked. What I thought was just a little leftover side dish turned out to be something my body couldn't quite handle anymore. I remember reheating a creamy mushroom dish one evening, just wanting something cozy after a long day. But by the time I'd finished eating, my stomach felt unsettled. Not in a dramatic food poisoning way, just off, tired, bloated. I brushed it off at first, then it happened again and again. That's when I started to connect the dots. It wasn't the sauce, it wasn't the seasoning, it was the mushrooms themselves, the way they'd changed when I reheated them. Their soft, spongy texture made it so easy for bacteria to grow unnoticed, especially if I'd left them sitting out too long before refrigerating. And let's be honest, how many of us reheat leftovers perfectly? We microwave in plastic, heat unevenly, or leave the food out too long before we get to it. Those habits, small as they seem, become bigger risks when your immune system isn't what it used to be. The science behind it made sense. Denatured proteins, oxidized compounds, silent bacterial growth. None of it sounds dramatic, but it builds up. Our digestion is slower now. Our systems less resilient. What a younger stomach might shrug off, ours can quietly suffer from. I started feeling foggy after these meals too, mentally foggy. Not a sharp headache, just a kind of heaviness, a lack of clarity. And that's when I realized food affects my brain now just as much as it does my belly, especially reheated food. What used to feel like an easy leftover turned into a lesson in awareness. And the shift wasn't hard. I still eat mushrooms, just differently. I make small batches now, sauté them fresh in olive oil, or add them raw to a salad if they're safe to eat that way. I get the taste I love without the physical price. There's something oddly freeing about choosing not to reheat them anymore. It's one less thing to wonder about, one less mystery stomach ache, one less nap I didn't want to take but had to because of how tired I felt after lunch. It's also about respecting the food itself. Mushrooms are alive with nutrients, texture, and flavor when fresh, but they're not built for long shelf lives. And they don't ask for much, just a little attention, a little intention. And for me, it became a quiet rule. If it's already been cooked, mushrooms only get one chance. They're a one-day food, a now food, not a later food. Because what I want now, more than anything, is to feel good after eating. Not just full, not just satisfied. Good. Clear, light, steady. Saying goodbye to reheated mushrooms helped me get closer to that. 2. Eggs. The silent shift from nourishment to harm. I used to think eggs were foolproof. I mean, what's easier than scrambling up a few and tossing the rest in the fridge for later? But the truth behind reheated eggs really surprised me, and not in a good way. Eggs are a wonderful food when fresh. High quality protein, vitamin D, choline, all great for brain and bone health. But once they cool, and especially when reheated, their proteins start to harden. Reheating causes those proteins to restructure again, making them tougher on digestion. For me, that meant feeling bloated or sluggish afterward. Things I never connected to my eggs before. Even more troubling is what happens to the fats inside eggs when reheated with oil or butter. They oxidize. turn into compounds that inflame the body and damage arteries. For seniors with heart issues, high cholesterol, or blood pressure problems, that's a silent danger. Now I make my eggs fresh each time. Boiled or poached, they're still simple, but they give me energy instead of taking it away. And they don't leave me with that low-grade fog I used to blame on aging. There was a time when scrambled eggs were my go-to breakfast, especially when I needed something fast. I'd make a batch, eat half, and slide the rest into a container for tomorrow. It felt efficient, smart even. But what I didn't realize was that every time I reheated those eggs, I was asking my body to do more work than it was ready for. It didn't happen all at once, it was gradual. I'd start to feel heavy after breakfast, not full, weighed down. Then came the bloating, the sluggish mornings. I blamed it on bad sleep or a cloudy day. It took me months to figure out that it might just be the eggs. I didn't want to believe it. Eggs had always been a symbol of simplicity, wholesomeness. But as I dug into the science, it became clearer. The protein in eggs is sensitive, intended to be eaten shortly after cooking. Once cooled and heated again, especially in a microwave, those proteins toughen. And for aging digestive systems, that extra toughness can mean extra strain. There's also something sneaky about how reheated eggs feel in the body. They still taste good, sure, but after eating them, I often felt just off. My energy would dip, my focus would drift. It wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. Once I stopped reheating them, that haze lifted. And then there's the fat. Most of us cook eggs with some kind of oil or butter. That's fine, when fresh. But when reheated, those fats oxidize, turning into compounds that silently chip away at your arteries. I started to think less about taste and more about long-term impact. Especially with heart issues in the family, I couldn't afford silent threats hiding in my breakfast. Now, I do things differently. I still eat eggs, I love them. But I cook them fresh, one portion at a time. A soft-boiled egg with toast. A gently poached one over sautéed greens. It's a few more minutes of effort, but the difference in how I feel is worth every second. The best part? I enjoy them more now. The texture is better. The taste is cleaner. And there's something deeply satisfying about knowing that my food is working for me, not against me. Sometimes I think about all the little things we do out of habit. How many of them made sense when we were 40, but no longer serve us at 70? Reheating eggs was one of those things for me. A small shift, a big reward. I'm not trying to scare anyone away from eggs. They're still one of the most nutrient-dense foods out there. But they're also delicate, and they deserve to be handled with care, especially when our bodies ask for gentleness. So now, when I crack an egg into a pan, I do it with a bit more attention. I cook it slowly, with intention. And I eat it knowing it's fresh, digestible, and kind to my system. And after breakfast, no fog, no bloating, just clarity. That's what food should feel like. 3. White potatoes, the comfort that quietly betrays. This one hit hardest for me. Mashed potatoes were a staple of my childhood. Warm, buttery, soft, pure comfort. But I had no idea that reheating them could be quietly hurting my health. White potatoes are high on the glycemic index even when fresh, meaning they spike your blood sugar. But when you cook, cool, and reheat them, especially with butter, cream, or oil, their starches transform into compounds that can trigger inflammation and insulin resistance. I used to think my post-lunch fatigue was just natural aging, but it turns out my leftovers were part of the problem. That spike and crash in blood sugar, that stiffness in my knees, that tingling in my feet, it all made sense once I learned how reheated white potatoes were affecting my circulation and nerves. And don't even get me started on plastic containers. Heating potatoes in those can leach chemicals like BPA, hormone disruptors that wreak havoc on the body. It felt like betrayal, honestly. This food that once comforted me was now silently taxing my system. 4. Spinach, the leafy green that doesn't like a second round. I used to think spinach was foolproof. I mean, how could something so light, so green, and so nutrient-packed possibly become harmful when reheated? But it turns out even something as humble as spinach has its own warning label. One not written on the bag, but written in how our bodies respond to it the second time around. Spinach is rich in something called nitrates, which are natural compounds found in many leafy greens. When you first cook spinach, these nitrates are harmless, even beneficial. But when cooked spinach is cooled and then reheated, those same nitrates can convert into nitrites and then into nitrosamines, which are compounds that have been linked to various health concerns, including increased cancer risk. Now, does this mean spinach is bad for you? Absolutely not. Spinach is one of nature's greatest gifts when eaten fresh or cooked just once. It's loaded with iron, folate, magnesium, and antioxidants that protect our eyes, brain, and heart. But it's not meant to be rewarmed. I learned this the hard way after a few weeks of reheating my leftover spinach side dish and feeling inexplicably off afterward. Fatigued, foggy, almost like I was running on fumes. That subtle fatigue, that was my body trying to process something it wasn't meant to handle. Now, if I make spinach, I eat it all fresh or use it raw in smoothies the next day. I treat it like a delicate ingredient because that's exactly what it is. 5. Chicken, the classic protein that turns risky. Chicken has always felt like the go-to protein, lean, familiar, easy to season. But what if I told you that reheating chicken can sometimes backfire, especially for those of us in our senior years? Here's what I didn't know before. Chicken is rich in protein, which is usually great. But when cooked, cooled, and then reheated, especially quickly or unevenly in a microwave, those proteins start to change. They harden. They become denatured. For someone with a robust digestive system, maybe that's manageable. But for me, and for many other seniors, it's a different story. My body doesn't break down those altered proteins the way it used to. That can lead to bloating, stomach discomfort, and even reduced nutrient absorption. The bigger danger is in how we reheat it. Microwaves often heat unevenly, leaving parts of the meat undercooked while others are scalding. That creates a breeding ground for bacteria like Salmonella or Campylobacter, the kinds of invaders our aging immune systems aren't always ready to fight off. I started noticing more digestive upset when eating leftover chicken. And at first, I thought it was the spices or the side dishes. But it wasn't. It was the chicken itself, reheated too fast, too often. Now, when I cook chicken, I do it in small portions and eat it fresh. If I do have leftovers, I reheat them slowly, thoroughly, and only once. That simple shift made all the difference in how I felt afterward. No more bloating, no more heaviness, just comfort the way food is meant to be. 6. Beets, nature's sweet root. With a warning tag, beets are beautiful. Their color, their earthiness, their ability to support blood flow and heart health. What's not to love? For years, I roasted batches of beets and kept them in the fridge for salads and sides. But I didn't know then what I know now. Just like spinach, beets contain high levels of nitrates. And when reheated, especially at high temperatures or multiple times, those nitrates can degrade into harmful compounds. What shocked me most was how easily it happened. Beets that sat in the fridge for a few days, then hit the microwave or hot skillet, didn't just lose their flavor. They turned into something my body didn't welcome. I started feeling flushed, lightheaded, or overly tired after eating them, never realizing that the culprit was right there, in those deep red slices on my plate. Like spinach, beets are best enjoyed fresh or simply chilled after their first cook. When I stopped reheating them and started adding them cold to salads, everything changed. The digestion issues faded. The fatigue lessened. My energy evened out again. Beets still have a place in my diet, but no longer on the reheat cycle. What struck me as I walked through all these foods, meal after meal, leftover after leftover, was this: we often eat on autopilot. We reach for yesterday's dish without asking how it might treat us today. And while that habit may have worked fine in our younger years, things change. Our digestion slows. Our immune systems soften. Our inflammation rises without warning. Every meal becomes more than just fuel. It becomes a crossroads. I used to think that health in your 60s, 70s, or 80s was about medications or exercise routines. And yes, those matter. But I've come to believe that one of the most powerful acts of self-care in later life is how we approach food. Not just what we eat, but how we cook, store, and reheat it. That's where the quiet power lies. Reheating oatmeal, vegetable soup, or brown rice the right way? That's a loving choice. It tells your body, I want to support you. Avoiding reheated mushrooms, eggs, white potatoes, spinach, chicken, or beets. That's not fear, it's wisdom. It's saying, I've learned enough to choose differently now. For me, this shift wasn't dramatic. It was gradual. One food at a time. One new habit each week. But the rewards? They were fast. Better energy, fewer stomach upsets, clearer thinking. And perhaps most valuable of all, a sense of agency. A feeling that even in aging, I can still shape how I feel with simple daily choices. So tomorrow, when you open the fridge and eye that container of leftovers, take a breath. Ask yourself, does this serve me? You don't have to give up everything you love, but you can love yourself enough to let go of the meals that no longer love you back. If you found this video helpful, or if it made you pause and think about your own fridge, please take a moment to share it with someone else who could benefit. Maybe it's a parent, a friend, or even yourself for future reference. Leave a comment below with the number 1 if you've learned something new that you'll apply starting today. If it wasn't what you were expecting, or if you have ideas for how we can do better next time, comment with the number 0. I read every response. And don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be the first to know when more senior-focused health wisdom is posted. Thanks for spending time with me today. Take care of yourself, every meal, every bite, every small choice. Because those small choices, they build the strong, joyful, independent life we all deserve.